Welcome back to episode 2 of my series on load development of the 45 Auto in my Smith and Wesson 1911 E series. Now, for episode 2, the first powder we're going to be starting off our load development with is Hodgdon Titegroup. And the reason we're doing that is, well, there's a few reasons actually. So one, Titegroup is the most affordable pistol powder that I think is on the market right now per pound. This pound I bought in June of 23 for $31.99 at my local gun shop. So that's at least $5 to $6 cheaper than anything else I can find on this list right now. The other reason I like to use it is that it requires less powder to get the same velocity as any other powder on the list, which means you can get more rounds per pound. So when you combine more rounds per pound plus it's cheaper per pound, it makes it the most affordable overall powder on the list, which meets one of our goals of making a very affordable plinking round. So just to recap from the introductory video, if you didn't watch it, we're going to be using Federal number 150 primers, a Lee 4-die set, and Extreme 200 grain round nose plated bullets with just mixed brass because that is what we're going to be plinking with. I didn't feel like sorting it all for this, so we're not going to. I'm not bullseye shooting. Now, some downsides of Titegroup that I don't want to be overlooked. It is a very high pressure powder, and what I mean by that is if you go look at the pressure curve on how it burns, it has a very high initial pressure curve, which means it has, I guess, more explosive properties than some other powder. It burns really hot, and it can be easier to get pressure spikes than some other powders on the list. The other one is that because it takes so little, it is a lot easier to double charge without catching it. Now, in a 45 case with pistol powder, you can double charge just about any of them because they're not coming close to filling the case up. But it's just something to be aware of if you use Titegroup for anything else in the future that might have less case capacity, where it's more noticeable if you put a double charge in with other powders. So now the introduction's out of the way, let me show you the load data that we're going to be using for this test. Now let's take a look at the load data. If you look at Extreme's website, which I will throw up on the screen, it lists Titegroup 5.1 grains at a velocity of 890 foot per second at 15,977 psi. I assume it's psi or CUP with 1.4 inch group. Now, I don't know how far that group was, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So let's compare that to what we have in the book. So on Lee's book, they actually don't have Titegroup data under copper plated. That's why it's cut off the screen. What they do have is Titegroup for lead and jacketed bullet data. So let's take what Extreme's given us and compare it to that. So they're saying 5.1 is going to go about 890. So for the jacketed bullet data, 4.7 is 812 and 5.2 is 884. So that seems to be pretty close to what 5.1 at 890 that Extreme is saying. For the lead bullet data, let's go down to Titegroup, 4.8 at 877 and 5.4 at 957. So it's pretty far off. A max of 5.4 for lead and a max of 5.2 for jacketed. So what we're going to do is we're going to split the difference. So we're going to start off at 4.8 and we're going to go 4.8, 5, and 5.2. If you split the difference between the lead and the jacketed bullet data, for the plated, which is right in between, it's probably a little bit closer to lead than jacketed. We should get something that is within the range of mild recoiling and accurate that we're looking for. And we know it is within the safe range of both lead and, where'd it go, Titegroup? Lead and jacketed bullet data, so we shouldn't have any pressure to worry about. So that's what we're going to do. Let's hit the bench, and then I'm going to show you how I use my fancy scale to do load development. So normally when I'm making mass amounts of pistol ammo, I will set my Hornady powder measure to what I need and just drop. But when I'm doing load development, I like to be a lot more precise so I can eliminate powder measure inconsistency from the equation. So I use my auto trickler on my FX120i that I got from my precision shooting days, and I do all my load development with that. It measures down to the 100th of a grain accuracy, well really 200ths of a grain, 0.02. So the way I do it for load development is, for the first one, you got to manually get everything in there. So we're looking for 4.8. There's 4.8. So what I'm going to do is I hit print. So now that it's printed, it's saved into the scale. So I'll go ahead and put this first one in the case. And after every time I put powder in the case, I go ahead and seat a bullet on it. But now all I got to do is set this guy back on here. And there's nothing in the tube, so it's going to take it a minute to warm up. I'll give it a little bit of help. I'll seat the bullet while it's doing that. On the second round, it's quite a bit faster. There it goes, and it starts trickling powder, and it's going to stop within 0.02 plus or minus of the target. At least it's supposed to. Sometimes it gets a little trigger happy, but let that guy trickle on up and I'll show you what you mean, or what I mean. Boom, 4.78. Oh, 4.8. So right on the money, within 200ths of a grain of where we want to be. I acknowledge it is much slower, but it is also much more precise, once again, to eliminate the variable of powder drop inconsistency. Now for our OAL, we're using about 1.6, getting that from Extreme's website. And I'm gonna go ahead and apply a pretty decent crimp to it after I get all of them done. And we're just gonna do 4.8, 5, and 5.2. And I'm not gonna bore you with the reloading process. And I will get them loaded up, and I will see you at the range. Welcome to the range. We're going to be shooting our groups today at 25 yards. I have some targets set up. We're going to be shooting from the braced position on a table to take out any human error. And we're going to be shooting next to our lab radar to give us a good idea of velocity and standard deviations. First up will be 4.8 grains of Titegroup. Top left target. Second, we're going to have 5 grains of Titegroup. Top middle target. Average of 798 with a standard deviation of 15. Third is going to be 5.2 grains of Titegroup. Top right target. $8.28. $8.40. $8.41. $8.53. $8.46. So after getting up here and actually looking at the targets, I was dead wrong about 5.2. From back there, it looked like they were all piling in this area. But it looks like, I hadn't reviewed the footage from up here yet, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 up here, which I can honestly say were not me. This first one on 4.8 was indeed me. I yanked it a little bit, but the rest of them are liking to sit low left. I felt like those shots were pretty good. So let's get back to the house. I'll pull all the data on the screen and we'll measure the groups. Well, we're back at the house here, and let's take a look at these results real quick. So the first thing to note is how much slower it is than predicted. Extreme was predicting on their load data website that we looked at that 5.1 was going to be going 890. Not even close. I mean, we hadn't hit 890 at 5.2. We hadn't hit 850, to be honest with you. So it would probably take, looking at about a 35 to 40 foot a second increase per 2/10, so 20 foot a second increase per tenth. We would have to be at about 5.4 to 5.5 to hit 890, which probably is pretty over pressure. We're also much slower than the load data book said. But anyways, 4.8 giving us an average of 763 with a standard deviation of 33 and a spread of 93. I went ahead and excluded that flyer on the far left, otherwise it would have been like a 6-inch group. But either way, that group's pretty horrible. In fact, none of these were that good, even though 5.2 looks a lot better. The numbers don't lie. So 5.0 giving us an average of 798.6, a standard deviation of almost 15, a spread of 37, so a little bit more consistent, and a group size of 4.5 and power factor of 159, so not quite at major. And lastly, 5.2, an average of 841, standard deviation of 9.1, so much more consistent. Extreme spread of 25 and a power factor of 168. So this one would make major power factor. None of them recoiled hard at all. They all had good ejection. No issues there, no cycling issues. And they were all pretty clean, unlike what you'll see with the HP38 that I went ahead and tested the same day in the next video. I don't think this is a powder I'm going to be using with these. I can tell you the HP38 did much better, especially towards the top end. So if you have any luck with Titegroup and these 200 grain round notes bullets, let me know in the comments section. I appreciate you taking your time to watch, and please leave me any feedback. I am horrible at editing, so any recommendations would be appreciated. Anyways, have a good one.